Hello and welcome to In the Spotlight with Quocirca, the definitive podcast on digital disruption in the print industry. I'm Louella Fernandes, Director of Quocirca, and today I'm really pleased to be joined by Alex Tatham, Managing Director of Westcoast, the leading UK IT distributor and also one of the largest privately owned companies in the UK. So welcome, Alex. It's great to have you today. I'm really pleased that you've taken the time to join the podcast.
Delighted, Louella. It really is a delight.
So I want to really sort of talk about the impact that Westcoast has seen on its business as a result of the pandemic. So, what we've seen over the past year, I guess, is that flexibility and agility are key to resilience of any businesses over the past year. So I know they're very core to Westcoast's values and principles. So maybe you could talk a bit about that and the impact.
Yeah, sure. Actually, I think that every business has looked at their business model, and whilst what is at the top of every CEO's agenda at the moment is to get their business more agile. They've realized that agility is an utterly critical part of the future of their business. And actually the successful businesses throughout the pandemic have been that agile business that can flex and move very quickly to their customers and the market's requirements. And of course, I think that's one of the reasons that Westcoast has been very successful during the course of this pandemic. I know plenty of businesses have not been, but Westcoast have grown about 25%. And during the course of the pandemic, largely, I think, because we had products that everyone really wanted, and we're the largest distributor of laptops in the country by some mile, I think. But nevertheless, the huge quantity and huge demand on IT has been extraordinary. And of course, that's not every aspect of IT. Some of the office print market, some of the desktop market hasn't gone nearly as well. But of course, that every single individual in our country and across Europe has wanted a device. And in many cases, of course, that there's vast quantities of ink required to print out forms in France and various other places that have led to a huge spike in business for Westcoast. But it's Westcoast's agility, you're absolutely right, that I think has proved the successful feature and key value that business has.
Yeah, so and you mentioned print there, and I think it's no big surprise that, it's been a very tough year for commercial print, at least. I think home printing is a different story. So you touched upon, your French business there and, perhaps seeing a spike in demand for printing. Can you talk a bit about the impact generally on commercial printing for your business and perhaps where you see opportunities coming forward as we return to the office?
Well, it's really all about return to the office, and that's what's driving it. Clearly, a lot of schools have been closed as well, and that often drives quite a lot of commercial print business. But of course, we have seen huge spikes in NHS delivery during the course of this particular pandemic, and the initial rollout into the Nightingale hospitals, as an example, back a year ago. Gosh, that seems so long ago, doesn't it, Louella? But nevertheless, that was a core focus for the business. Then actually delivering print requirements to a lot of NHS and private hospitals all the way across the country. And Westcoast are very, very good at not only delivering the hardware, but also the consumables and the services around that. And that's something that has clearly been very important, that we've been able to keep going. Nevertheless, of course, the overall print market has definitely gone down. If I look forward, however, I can see that beginning to pick up, and it's certainly at a higher level in April than it was in April last year. So I think that we've got much more optimism around that print market. And I think you're also going to see some very interesting movements in that commercial print market. There are too many vendors. There are too many partners here that actually are going to consolidate. And I think the great news is that Westcoast will form a centre of gravity into this particular market. And I think you're going to see us do more on behalf of the commercial print reseller market and more on behalf of the vendors that we look after as well, whether it's consumables, whether it's spares. A lot of people are outsourcing their business into our ability to be able to deliver quickly and in a more agile fashion than they can do themselves.
Yeah, and I think I just wanted to pick up on that point because I know, I guess the philosophy of Westcoast is very much you employ a narrow and deep model in terms of your vendor partnerships.
Yes.
And you touched there on the potential consolidation that we'll see in the market. Can you talk a bit about not just only in the print market, but other markets, how that philosophy actually works in terms of how you select vendors and how that sort of translates to working with resellers as well?
Yes, I think the key for us is that we don't sell everything, but everything that we sell and every single vendor that we have, we are the number one distributor for. So that gives you a sense of as they come on board, it takes some time to get to that position, but we really make sure that we give a very rich level of service. It also means our salespeople don't have to constantly refer to someone else to get technical answers, because we can train them on a fairly narrow set of products to be able to deliver that kind of service level that customers want. So actually, we have a very, very strong focus in the ability to be able to deliver a very tight level of service around a vendor. So when a customer asks, can I have a special bid, we are really, really capable, and our salespeople are empowered to make sure that we've got that capability of helping that customer. And so we have a very customer-centric focus around that, as well as that vendor-centric business, because we don't have thousands of vendors. We have 10 big ones.
And how does that sort of consolidation that we're seeing translate into the distribution market? Because obviously there's been a lot of consolidation, I think Synex and Tech Data and so on. What impact do you see that having on West Coast, or perhaps in Europe it's less of an impact than in North America?
Well, I'm delighted, Louella, that you mentioned that, because of course both Ingram and Tech Data have had changes of ownership. And of course, whilst it hasn't got necessarily an immediate impact in the UK, it's certainly not going to help them speed up. And they're going to be focused internally. They're going to be focused on their internal systems. They're going to be focused on other things. And I think, again, that's another reason that Westcoast were responsible for almost the entire growth in the UK market. If you look at context data last year, Westcoast grew by 600 million, and the whole UK market only grew by 450 million. So if you look at that, I think it's one of the reasons is that they are looking internally, and Westcoast are looking at the customer.
So would you say that one of the real growth areas then for West Coast, obviously, that's incredible growth over a year of the pandemic. Would you say that by sitting, at that sort of crucial point between the vendors and the channel, that you are developing more value-added services and tailoring offerings for both parties?
Well, listen, the word value add has often been misconstrued, I think, in this particular focus. We create the value that the customer wants to pay for. And if the customer wants to pay for it, then we'll add that value and add it onto our service levels. So, of course, what you're seeing is that distribution are doing more on behalf of resellers as they change their businesses. So their business is increasingly a managed service to their customers, and they're getting rid of their warehouse. And in order to be able to do that, where does the vendor put the stock that they were going to sell them direct even? Well, they put it into Westcoast warehouse, and we do it for them, whether it's a 3PL service or just a logistics service. We're adding services. We can configure now 5,000 laptops a day. So I wanted to give you that sense of this is vast quantities of equipment coming through Westcoast. We've more than doubled the capacity in our warehouse. We've obviously dramatically expanded, maybe 10 times, the ability to be able to configure product as it goes through Westcoast business on behalf of many resellers. Now, that relates to just about any product that requires an element of configuration. So it's PDI for commercial printing, as an example. We've got a large PDI center that effectively does that on behalf of customers. They're only going to pay for that if they want it. And they think that this is a better service and a cheaper service that they can do themselves. But as they've been looking at their own costs, why wouldn't they get a distributor who can do it at vast volumes to do it more cheaply? It means they can shrink their own cost base, shrink their footprint in terms of their own warehousing space. Come back to vendors. The vendors themselves, of course, have exactly the same issue. How do they land it into the UK? Brexit has caused some of those issues potentially as well. How do they land it in the UK and get someone to do all the work for them? And we're doing increasing amounts of work on behalf of retailers, on behalf of vendors going into retail. We're doing HP store, Lenovo store, for instance. So the direct models that all of that comes through Westcoast. So you'll see Westcoast use its service levels and do the things it does really well and bend into the shape that both vendors and resellers want.
Yeah, and it's interesting you talk about that, because I think we see a lot of disruption in the channel, particularly obviously the print channel is the area I really focus on. And one of the areas is home printing, and where they potentially, I think it fell through the gap, was that most people were buying printers online through Amazon, and rather than going through the channel partners.
Yes, our warehousing are weeping with the amount of bulk that they have to deliver, of course, because one thing that we do know about a home printer is that there aren't that many to a pallet. There is a shortage of these things. They're like gold dust. And Westcoast do the vast majority of the home printing business in the UK. Whether it's the ink that goes in, we supply all the supermarkets, all the online players, and all of that goods come from Westcoast's business, as well as vast quantities, particularly of HP machines, of course, but of home printing, and the demand is nowhere near the supply. What we are seeing, however, is the beginning of people upgrading their printer at home because they need a better printer at home. And we're seeing a change from what I describe as that 30 quid printer that feels like a disposable item, more into a £200 color laser that actually sits on your desktop and sits in the same footprint perhaps as that cheaper printer. But there are still vast amounts required for that home working market now. And I think that you'll see that demand continue for at least another year.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting with the return to work you mentioned, and I can see you're in the office, and
indeed I am, and we're delighted to be so. That's another key thing about Westcoast, is that Westcoast have been in the office almost all the way through this pandemic, every time that we can have done, and I think so many people, when you phone a customer up, they say, well, I'm so sorry, we've got a high volume of calls at the moment, we can't answer your phone call. Well, that may have been acceptable a year ago when the pandemic started. That is no longer an acceptable excuse. Home working is here to stay, as everyone's been talking about, and therefore it doesn't matter where you're in the office or whether you're at home. That has been an utterly critical thing, and that's one of the best bits of feedback I think that I get from Westcoast is that Westcoast, we don't know whether you're in the office or not, as the case may be. We realise that you're serving us is exactly the same way. That is not true for all my competitors, I can assure you. And I really think that is a critical part of Westcoast's success. But we love being in the office. We think it generates energy, enthusiasm. And of course, we employ a lot of young workers in our business, and they enjoy being in the office. And so therefore, we make sure that the office is as safe as it can be. We're surrounded in perspex and various things here. But the fact is that it's really important that we are in the office. So.
Yeah, and I think it's all about that office buzz and the office culture. And so I'm interested. So are you finding that people are printing when they're back in the office at Westcoast? Because I think there's two issues around printing when you go back to the office. It's one, obviously, people are printing at home. So potentially they're not printing the volumes, but perhaps when they go back to the office, those volumes will bounce back. Or on the flip side, they've got used to working with two screens more digitally. And maybe when they go back to the office, they don't feel the need to print. I'm just, from your personal opinion, what do you think?
There will be less printing. There will be, we talk about printing at home. Well, of course, there's been more printing at home because you've been at home, but people print less at home than they would do normally. And I'm certain that we've all got friends who go into the office to do their printing because they've got to get it done. And you don't print a 100-page report or a huge great contract or whatever on your home printer because it would sort of fizz and die. So I think that what's critical about printing is that whilst there's still a bit of printing, but of course there's been a proliferation of DocuSign, virtual signature, and of course the fantastic carbon elements that brings. So this focus on sustainability at the moment has been utterly critical in the success of this. And when you see what happens in this, one of the things that we're doing at Westcoast is to make sure that actually if you do use virtual signature, you get a carbon certificate to say, actually, here's how much carbon I've saved. So sustainability, I think, is going to be a critical element here too. And that has gone right to the top of everyone's agenda. Yeah,
we're seeing the same thing in the research that we've conducted, is that sustainability was a motivator for technology buying decisions before, but now it's really sort of, crept to the top of the agenda. And yeah, I'm interested in your views in terms of your technology offerings in general. Does Westcoast have a specific sustainability offering across its other technology areas in terms of how it's kind of messaging that for its customers as well as its channel?
I think it's at the moment it feels as though it's messaging, but it's actually driving policy and things that we're doing now. So the secret is to be able to make sure that we get a common way of measuring carbon, making sure that effectively that you're saving your customers money. Obviously, it's driving some of the internal procedures and processes here. Sustainability is great for business because actually it cuts waste. It makes you focus on things that you can do better all the time. And I think that if I look at that, that's what's driving some of the West Coast things. But our job is to do it for our customers now, because they're all saying, well, what do I do about some of these things? So actually looking at how that you help your customers measure their own impact on the environment and their own impact on this. And West Coast are a supply chain business, and let's face it, the majority of the sustainability issues don't rest with West Coast. They rest with our vendors in terms of manufacturing and what they make and how they transfer it into West Coast. West Coast limited amount of addition of carbon in terms of its delivery is all it can do, and our job is to do that more efficiently and more effectively. But actually, our job is to make sure that we drive vendors and make sure we push environmental success with vendors and be that hub, if you like, for all resellers to say, well, actually, I'm buying environmentally friendly products, and they can come to West Coast to see what's happening there. That's effectively where West Coast are driving their sustainability model. And of course, it is nowhere near developed at the moment, I have to say, but that is what's driving our abilities at the moment. And of course, we're also making sure that we work with IT asset disposal businesses to make sure that the goods that we put in, there are goods coming out of that, and those are effectively disposed of and recycled. And there are lots of professional companies that do that very well.
Yeah, so it's that whole kind of circular model for technology. So I just wanted to kind of to move on slightly to the potential disruption that we're seeing in the channel from cloud. So are you viewing, because obviously cloud has really accelerated over the past year and it's been critical to businesses staying operational, and how does cloud impact the distribution model? Because we're really moving from that kind of legacy on-prem environment to the cloud infrastructure. And
yes, we are.
And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, here's a classic. Is that, and I've been in distribution now for over 25 years, and the demise of distribution has often been touted by many commentators to say, well, whether it's the internet or whether it's Amazon or whether it's cloud in this particular instance is going to kill off distribution. That's the end of that. Well, who are the most successful cloud partners for Microsoft in the country? Well, they're distributors. Yeah, and it's no surprise that West Coast Cloud will do £100 million worth of services through cloud this year, supporting both the modern workplace, move to Azure, and even Dynamics. So actually, you can build a hugely successful cloud business. The key there is billing as a service, making sure that we can even do sales as a service on behalf of our resellers that are struggling with that transition, of course. And the way that we've done that is that we built a separate cloud team and a separate cloud business sitting alongside West Coast, so that actually there's no conflict there for a salesperson to say, oh, what do I sell? I don't know what to do. Yeah, actually, effectively, we'll do what's best for the customer. And as they move to the cloud, and you're absolutely right, so many of them have, and as they move to the cloud, we've absolutely been able to support them to do that, particularly in that initial, rather difficult first transition. We're also seeing, of course, customers that were previously direct with Microsoft come back into the channel now, and you're seeing proliferation of business going on there. And our job is to support resellers and, of course, the vendor partners that want cloud parties to be able to do that. Our job is to be able to make sure that we can support those resellers in their cloud business as they move to the cloud. All resellers are going to become a managed service partner. That's the move to, everyone is doing that. So effectively, I mentioned previously, well, that means you're shutting down your warehouse, you're shutting down some of the traditional VAR facilities that you used to have, and that's what West Coast will do. But our job is also to provide systems and capability for resellers to support them in their move to the cloud. And of course, distribution, all distributors, by the way, and good ones, will do that and will do it well. And of course, that is not only the agility that we have as a business, but the flexibility we have and the super fast decision making that we are able to do.
Yeah, that sounds great, because I think, the channel, particularly on the print side, the majority is still very much box shifting mode and transactional. And I think that transition they've made to MPS has been a challenge for some of them. And I think the cloud is the next challenge. And I guess they're looking for distributors to support them on that journey.
We are really helping them do that. And I think it's a great success. That business is growing much faster than the whole business. But I can assure you, the box must be shifted somewhere. Yeah, and we have seen, I think one of the Westcoast successes this year, of course, is that we have been able to shift an awful lot of them. I mean, we shipped over 4 million devices last year. 4 million devices.
And I wanted to talk a bit about the acquisitions you've made recently. I think it was a cybersecurity in the cybersecurity space, and that's very interesting to sort of see the direction Westcoast is taking with that.
Well, listen, cyber has often been at the top of a CEO's agenda. As I said, I think that's changed now, because they say, well, how do I make my business more agile? By the way, make it secure. And I think this is a great opportunity for resellers out there, because actually, I talked about being managed service providers. They're also, end users are saying to their reseller to say, I know security is a real issue, sort it. Yeah, don't sell me a product, sell me a service that sorts out what I need to do. And I think that's exactly what happens.
So just finally, I just wanted to really ask you, in terms of what do you see the long-term impact on the channel from, what we've seen over the past year in terms of consolidation, disruption? We've talked a bit about that transition to as a service, but is there anything that you see will be key going forward? Well,
I think if you look at what's the environment, the great news is that Great Britain will do pretty well with its vaccination program. I think that the IMF had even better forecasts yesterday than they had for the UK economy going forward. I think that you're going to see an explosive economy. One thing that we have all known, that during the pandemic, technology has been critical. I can assure you, during the explosion or what's going forward in terms of the economy, technology will be even more critical. So the joy of this is that we're in the right business. If you are in the technology business, Westcoast can absolutely help you deliver a whole range of different things to be able to drive your business and make sure that you're delivering that technology. And Britain needs to be famous for technology. You've seen the industrial strategy potentially being touted today by government. You're absolutely going to see some key focus around technology and creating great technology hubs. We need to be famous in this country for technology. And I think that the Thames Valley, where we sit today and where Westcoast sit right at the heart of that, is going to be the technology hub for Britain. And you're going to see Westcoast deliver all sorts of services and software and abilities and create capability for an even wider range of customers going forward.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. It's great to hear your kind of enthusiasm and, the ambitious plans.
Well, anyone knows me that knows that I'm the most enthusiastic man alive about these things. And I love what we do. And I love our company. And I love the fact that we're growing all the time. And the fact is that we can absolutely drive a whole range of exciting things into our country here, and of course all the way across Europe too. We're certainly one of the largest distributors in Ireland. We're growing in France and Germany. There's really exciting prospects for our business going forward.
Yeah, brilliant. So I just want to end on a final question, because I'm asking all guests, now that we're emerging out of lockdown, what's the first place you plan to visit?
Well, I hesitate to say probably that my parents and parents-in-law probably is the answer. My mother has been shielding, and I look at those as being, it's delighted to be able to go and see them, which I have most recently, which has been great to be able to see them. And I think that's the most important thing. Let's face it, we've all suffered extraordinary things during the course of this dreadful year that we've all been through, and there have been highs and lows, and more lows than highs during the course of this. Our job is to make sure that we look after our families and friends, and I look forward very much to seeing many more of them as the summer looms and lockdown eases.
Yeah, thanks again for your time. It's really great that you had the time to join us, and some really great insights.
Thank you, Louella. Really, it was a delight joining you.
So thank you for joining today's episode of In the Spotlight with Quocirca. Please visit quocirca.com for more information on the podcast, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks again for joining, and I look forward to seeing you in our next episode.